Hi, I'm David Jackson with USA Today. Thank you for joining us, and we're joined today by Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, and he's here because of what a lot of politicians like to call Project 2025. It's a subject of a lot of criticism from the Democrats and a lot of praise from Republicans, so I just want to start out by asking, what is Project 2025?
David, thanks for the opportunity to visit with you.
I suppose if progressive Democrats hate it, it's a good idea. And it's a good idea because it's a corrective to what's happened for too long in this country, which is over the last half century, especially since LBJ was president, progressive Democrats, the radical left, have taken over the federal government as unelected bureaucrats. Project 2025 is an attempt to restore proper constitutional order to this country. It is a set of policies. It is a menu of options. I like to refer to it as sort of the menu from Cheesecake Factory. It's every possible thing that someone might want to take on, which means there's no possible way that any president, even if he or she was really aligned with everything, would take on all of these, right? It's a manual for conservative policy thought, but it's also a database for personnel who may be chosen by the next president and his advisors to do so. That's ultimately his choice, right? And I think the thing that the media has gotten totally wrong about Project 2025 is both some of the particular planks in it, but also that the whole point is to be of service to any administration. Frankly, we would love it if the current administration would use it. We know that philosophically it's unlikely. I'm not being sarcastic in saying that, but we also know that great ideas and great people rise to the top, and if the will of the American people this November is to elect Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as president and vice president, then the strength of those ideas, the strength of those people, forget about the label Project 2025, I think will rise to the top.
Well, the Democrats say it's a blueprint for a Trump administration. I mean, why are they wrong?
It's a blueprint only if President Trump,
Vice President Vance choose it to be, right? They're the bosses. They're the guys who are going to make the decision along with their advisors, and perhaps some historical context is helpful. The Heritage Foundation has done this since 1980 with what we then called Mandate for Leadership. I think what has made Project 2025 such a boogeyman for progressive Democrats this time around is that the conservative movement has never been this unified. We've never been this organized. We've never been this resolute, especially after the assassination attempt on Saturday, about making sure that when conservatives are in power, whether they're president of the United States, member of the U.S. Senate, governor, mayor, that there's actually policy substance behind what they want to do. There will always be disagreements in this country about policy direction. I think it's imperative on the left that they stop the rhetoric. Some of it's been vile and violent. Some of it has led to threats on those of us on the right. That was happening before Saturday. If they want to have a policy conversation, let's be intellectually honest about it, which is why I appreciate having this conversation with you.
They say you guys want to end abortion,
which is wrong.
Want to allow the president to stack the government with partisans rather than. So why are they wrong about them? Let's take those two issues: abortion.
Because they have a first grade
level of reading comprehension.
What do you want to do with abortion policy?
With abortion policy, we aspire to a pro-life country
that is settled by society and culture. President Trump and Vice President Vance have charted a vision in terms of politics and policy that reflects the majority of the country, which is let's let states focus on this. And beyond that, I think it's important to understand on other policy areas like education, which happens to be my policy expertise. I'm a fifth generation teacher, only went to public schools, grew up a poor kid like J.D. Vance. What stands in the way of people in South Texas or in the Rust Belt in achieving the success that, say, J.D. Vance has gotten is that we've spent $1 trillion on the U.S. Department of Education or so since 1979, and all that's happened is that academic achievement in every demographic group has gone down. What Project 2025 charts is a vision that updates education, that devolves power from Washington and gives it back to the states and to the people.
What's your response to this claim that your plan would give the president basically unlimited power to prosecute political enemies, to eliminate regulations?
There's nothing in the plan that says that.
I think what the Biden-Harris campaign has done is take a 100% mischaracterization of the plan, and they've spent more money on that attacking it than we have spent putting the plan together. They get one thing right, however. One thing right amid all of that mischaracterization, so I'll give them credit. It does call for the elimination of the U.S. Department of Education.
That's true. And why would you want to do that, though?
Because it's just been a disaster. As I mentioned.
I still, believe it or not, have friends on the political left. I've been the only conservative faculty member in some faculties. And so I understand that slings and arrows come when you're a conservative and say these things. But by any objective measure, for someone who's intellectually honest, who considers themselves easily convinced by facts, there is no objective measure that says that the U.S. Department of Education's creation has benefited American education. Every objective measure since its creation has actually gone down.
Now, of course, President Trump is, or former President Trump is trying to distance himself from your plan. You know, he says he doesn't know anything about it. That's not really true, is it? I mean, he's spoken at Heritage Foundation events, and
well,
there are a lot of his people who have been involved in
sure.
developing this plan.
Look, we have the Heritage Foundation
Has a good relationship with President Trump even to this day. We understand with absolutely no hard feelings that he has to run a campaign independent of all of these other groups, right? We also, for the sake of our groups, because we're nonprofits, are independent of a presidential campaign. We're in a political season right now. That political season is going horrifically for progressive Democrats because the policy record of the Biden-Harris administration is awful on the economy, on education, on energy, on foreign policy. I could keep going on, but I'll finish answering your question. President Trump, when he gets into a transition, if that's the will of the American people, then we'll decide the policies, the people he wants in his administration. All Project 2025 is a set of recommendations, and some percentage of those will be accepted. You know, Heritage Foundation is often referred to as Ronald Reagan's think tank. Ronald Reagan didn't accept 100% of our recommendations. I think ultimately it's a non-story because this is how the apparatus on the left always works. What's driving Biden and Harris and progressive Democrats crazy is that we've taken a page from their playbook to offer some recommendations if our candidates actually win.
And they may try 2025 a central focus of their campaign. When did they start doing that? Do you know how this came
sometime
about?
this spring.
I mean, do you know how this came about, or what have you heard about why they decided to make this such a deal?
Well, I think they're desperate. They have nothing else to run on.
I mean, just as a social scientist, as someone who I guess is something of an expert on politics, if you're Biden and Harris, what else would you run on? Their record's awful. The contrast in policy between the Biden-Harris administration and Trump's first term is night and day. I think that the American people are seeing this. What we hear so often in the focus groups we do around the country, David, is that Americans are saying, we don't even really care about which political party we belong to. We belong to the common sense party. And common sense is telling Americans that Biden has been an utter failure. They wish him a long, healthy, well-deserved, peaceful retirement. And from a policy perspective, just purely, I think that would be great for America.
That Trump has said that some of your ideas are crazy. Do you know the specific policies that he disagrees with you guys on?
No, not yet. I imagine at some point
We'll have that conversation at the time we move from the political season, which is not our domain, right? We're in the policy and ideas and sort of academic and intellectual lane. It's the nature of a think tank. When we get into policy conversations, we'll figure that out. And to be clear, whether it's President Trump or whether it's a governor or whether it's a member of the Senate or the U.S. House, they tell us what they want their priorities to be, and the way public policy organizations work, the way Project 2025 works, is then say, if that's your priority, sir or ma'am, then here's the policy substance. Here's the plan that you might enact to go do that. So that's how that chronology works. The standard bearers always make the decisions.
And I know Trump doesn't want to deal with Social Security or Medicare. He doesn't really want to touch it. What do you all say about those entitlement
we say
programs?
nothing about Social Security in Project 2025.
Some of the individual organizations that are part of Project 2025 might do some work on that. Keep in mind, we've got 110 conservative organizations that are part of it. But we understand that President Trump not only has an intuitive sense of where the American people are on that question and others, but he also understands that obviously he's just going to have 4 years to get some priorities done. And he's rightly focused on those issues on which 80% of American people agree. We've got to close the border, we've got to end illegal immigration, we have to end the nonsense of the Green New Deal, we've got to revitalize the American economy, and we have to stop being the police force around the world and actually have a very restrained sense of foreign policy. Use sparingly the military if we must, but it also has to be very lethal.
And I know I've been told by several people that President Trump is kind of annoyed with you guys, and he thinks that y'all are trying to steal some of his thunder, trying to take credit for some of the things he's done. Have you gotten any blowback from Trump or any of his aides about the publicity surrounding?
They are rightly focused on winning a presidential
campaign, and purely from a policy perspective. I don't do politics leading a nonprofit. I'm, as you know, an academic and a policy guy. When we get into the policy season, once the election is behind us, then that's when public policy organizations, if they are so called, will perhaps have the opportunity to present some recommendations.
And the first time I heard about Project 2025 was I heard it was basically a recruiting mission, that you guys were looking for people to staff a Republican administration, or in the alternative, a Trump administration. So how can you say, aren't y'all basically trying to forge whatever Trump does when he's get elected? Aren't y'all really trying to staff the second Trump administration?
Actually, what we're trying to do,
Beyond trying, we've succeeded in doing is building a personnel database for the entire center-right movement in the country. And whoever the conservative standard bearer is, in this case, President Trump, if they choose that they want some of these people, then they are able to do that. The great thing about Project 2025 is that we had a goal of recruiting 10,000 people into this database. Obviously, President Trump, Vice President Vance, their advisors will make those decisions, but never before has the conservative movement done this kind of thing. The left has done this for years. I think a lot of the mischaracterization is that the intention behind that is to sort of obscure that that's what they've been doing. But the great thing about all of the earned media that Project 2025 has gotten in the last week is that we've had 3,000 additional Americans decide that they want to throw their name in the hat.
Aren't you going to push those guys to be part of the administration?
we're not pushing anybody. President Trump and Vice President Vance.
To make those decisions.
And lastly, how does it feel to be a political punching bag? I'm always curious about this.
You know, I learned at an early age
You only take flack when you're over the target. So bring it on. We're taking the country back.